Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth podcast. Today I have a frequent flyer on our podcast, Mr. David Zapata, a good friend of mine, colleague at Factum Financial, partner in growing relationships and in serving people. David's so appreciative you can come back and spend some time with us. I am excited about the conversation today. The conversation today is going to impact and touch so many people that I can't wait for people to hear it, absorb it, and share it. That's going to be the ultimate excitement as we go through this. So welcome and thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be part of your world.
Yeah. And as any of the listeners in the past, David is a brilliant mind. He's a good friend of mine. And again, what we're going to talk about today is going to be something that is, I would say, maybe David, you can probably touch on this a little bit more. I would say it's very foundational to every conversation that we're having today with a lot of our clients. And it's foundational, but yet it's not talked about. This is the goofy part. It's not really addressed. It's not. It kind of is, but it really it's in the shadows. It doesn't really come out to have a conversation. And what we're excited about is this conversation, and we call it a tough money conversation. And it's not that we want to have tough conversations, but we want to see how you can toughen your money, how you can put your money in your life in a much tougher position when things get hard. So this is what we want. This is what we strive to serve our clients with, is like putting them in a financial position where events that are going to happen in the world aren't going to negatively impact them. But more importantly, if we're doing the right things, they can take advantage of opportunities. I don't know, is that kind of how you see it, David? You're the one that kind of created and curated this message. So I'm interested to hear a lot about why did you start with this, or why did you go down this pathway?
Yeah, it's certainly a team effort for Factum, but in our belief of the 1 + 1 = 11, things like this come up. A product that we can use to really impact people from an education and awareness perspective. And I think the starting point of the conversation for me is always looking at our most important idea, the 5 areas of life. And one realization we have often with clients is that in our spiritual life, in our personal life, in our family life, we are very close to those relationships because we cannot just transfer that responsibility of developing a relation to someone. I always joke, I would not pretend to send my kids to Europe for 18 years to go to school and when they come back have a close relationship with them. We
Yeah.
cannot do that. Yet, a lot of Americans send their money away for 30 years and expect to have a close relationship with their money in their financial area of life. And this is why people have so much distance with their money. They're not close enough, they don't understand it. And we design a product to improve people's ability to have a close relationship with their money. We typically call that financial management weight.
Yeah.
One of the gaps we see in our communities, in our clients we serve, regardless of income levels, regardless of net worth, regardless of wealth level, is that there's a significant need to understand how to have a closer relationship with our money, which is where tough money comes from.
And that closer relationships really starts with understanding.
Mhm.
Understanding where it is and understanding, I think sometimes our job is to be the flashlight. We want to bring light to areas that really have had very little conversation.
Yeah.
And that's really that's how I see where the tough money conversations. But you're right. That visual of thinking, hey, if I send my son to boarding school out in New York, what does he come back with? Does he come back with the North Dakota values that I appreciate, or does he come back with New York values? And not that there's anything wrong with New York, but it's still not the values that we hold. And so I think that's a great visual. I think that's a great way to see how we have a relationship with money. And I love that conversation you bring there. As we start, so David, is it fair to say that there's 4 parts to this, what we call tough money conversation? And I know you do 1-day and 2-day seminars
Yeah.
on this, right? So it can get to be very deep. We're going to go, I like to use your terminology, we're going to scuba dive through some of this today. Excuse me, yeah, we're going to snorkel through some of this today. And if you want to scuba dive and get deep into these conversations, I would say either find out where our next event is, come and listen and participate in a 1 or 2-day event, because we have these on a regular basis and we're going to be taking these around the United States, and or reach out to David or myself and ask, hey, I want to know more about this idea of tough money. How do I find tougher money in my world? Because it's a personal conversation, because everything you do really should revolve around your goals and where you see your money and what your vision is around where you want to put your money. So it needs to be a personal relationship and a personal conversation with myself or David. Reach out to us. David, how can they reach you real quick if they're wanting to do this?
You can always email me directly, David Zapata at factumfinancial.com. You can reach our team at factumfinancial.com, of course. We are all over podcast. You can find our content in YouTube. And obviously, if you go to our website, we have a very robust education library. But if you want to directly have a conversation about tough money, happy to get in touch with you through email.
Yeah. So when you say David Zapata, let me spell Zapata because I'm still not really 100% sure how to spell. I'm just kidding.
Zebra,
Paul.
apple, potato, apple, Thomas, apple.
Okay,
Zapata.
Zapata. Okay, well, thank you so much. So let's get into, again, we're going to probably break this into a number of different podcasts. So if you're listening, look for parts 2, parts 3, and parts 4 when it comes to the conversation around tough money. David, let's hit it. And for the listeners, just know that some of the visuals, we're going to have some visuals. It's going to be limited, but it's going to be on YouTube. We'd ask that you can just go out there and kind of take a look at it as well. So,
Yeah.
and those links will be in the show notes below.
Well, wait, I think a natural point is let's talk about why use the word tough. Why tough money, right? I think that's a very important initial point because what we need to recognize is the kind of relationship we have has to do with the conversations we have. So the conversation with our money needs to be about a particular description. And we've used tough for the following reason. This is inspired from a definition from a book from Nassim Taleb. It's called Anti-fragility. And the definition for this characteristic is the ability of a system or something to thrive during events that bring stress or some type of impact that can create two outcomes. Either, if we talk about money, tough money, after an event, we can have a decline. Think about 2008 and everyone that had to give their houses back to the bank because they were in a position to go through a recession. Or the opposite, we can actually have the ability to thrive through an event and learn from it and become better, stronger, tougher,
Yeah.
because we're in a position that we go through a recession. And then in 2011, we have the liquidity to go buy houses at a discount and build wealth. This is the visual. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I would love to share the visual that we typically teach in the course for this. Tough money effect being, again, the ability to thrive on this y-axis weight. On the x-axis is time. And events will come, by the way, wait, every so many years, 5, 7, 10 years. If you just think about recessions, you can follow the history of the economy and you'll see recessions every 5 to 10 years in our history. But events can also be a disability occurrence, an accident, a disease, a lawsuit, a divorce, things that are going to continue to happen that we may not control, wait. And like I was saying, you may not have tough money, and that event can definitely take you to a place that you don't want to be. You're not going to be able to thrive. Or we can do something today to start preparing, developing tough money to continue to thrive through events that are guaranteed to continue to come by way. And I share this visual because I think it's important. Yes, sir.
The idea is that as we see the world today, it starts with, and this is the part that most people get. As we see today, we imagine everything going in a straight linear line. Now I can see it. Thank you. But we also know that never is the case, right? We just, life is not linear. There's going to be something in our lives that are going to change, right? And we call these things events because we don't know what the next event is. We can look back and we can identify some events, but we don't know what those events are. So as we look at this and as we see this, when those events happen, a couple of things are going to happen in our life. So we have this excitement about where we're at, what we're going to do. We have this plan for our money and a plan for our life. And then when events happen is, how do we respond to that? How
Yeah.
do we respond and how are we able to respond?
Yes.
Sometimes we want to respond differently, but we don't have the capacity or the abilities to respond the way we want to. And
Absolutely.
and this is where the idea of anti-fragility, and the best example I've used when I heard you talking about this, and I actually read the book a long time ago, or heard this idea a while back, and I really never put it together until I planted some trees in my backyard. And I put we have rabbits out here, so we put the things around them to protect the rabbits from eating the bottom of the trees. And the guy at the shop told me to take those off in the summertime when they don't need it because the rabbits won't eat the bottom of the trees because they need to have the effect of the wind pushing on them. They need to become stronger by having that pressure on them and having that,
Mhm.
again, it's kind of the same concept. The more there's pressure that doesn't break them, it makes them stronger. And that's that whole
Yeah.
idea, is that we can't expect our money to have the bounce back effect it has unless we can test it. And if we test it, then become stronger.
I'll give you another analogy that I think we use in our live events and it resonates with people because it's very intuitively true. So we talked about events. Events are within our control, some of them are not. And the best thing we can do to develop tough money is to prepare and become that tough money when we have events that we can control. So if we go back to the 5 areas of life, if we think about our personal area, the physical aspect in our personal area, right? We can go to a gym today when we're healthy, when we're capable of, and lift weights and get stronger and also come home and rest and sleep and eat and rest, okay? And that cycle of doing exercising and resting and trying to stress our body in a controlled environment is what creates a stronger body. And when we get to tough money and we get to the financial area of life, in times where we can control events, what if we go and do some financial education, we get some financial awareness, and we start putting the habits in place that we need to develop tough money? Which is again the focus of this exercise weight. And like you said earlier, it is a 4 section exercise that we do in multiple formats. Sometimes we do a 3 hour event, 8 hour, a day and a half, and we go as deep as the community wants to go. A series of exercises that allow you to train in your financial management. Your financial statement, your income statement at the top, how money flows through your life, income minus expenses, and understanding your cash flow, as well as what's happening in your balance sheet. What do you own and the debt you own, and how it all interacts for you to have tough money.
Yep. That's a really good point, David, because I love the visual going to the gym too, right? You're in a controlled environment getting stronger and stronger. But
Yeah,
it's about being intentional and purposeful in
yeah,
each of those moves.
yeah.
One of the things that I really wanted to bring out too, that before I forget, this is meant, this conversation, at least in your experience, what we're seeing is that it's being used with individuals of really doesn't matter what income class they're in. It's still basically the same conversations, just add zeros and take away zeros, and it's different stages of life. It's still a relevant conversation, and even to that point, it's the same conversation you're taking to your business. So you can apply this strategy, these ideas, if you're a business owner, if you're an employee, self-employed, whatever it might be. These conversations apply again to you personally and also within your business. So it can be applied really across the board.
Well, wait, one of the most common pieces of feedback we get is, oh, I wish I would have learned this when I was in high school or middle school or in college. And the thing about financial education is that nobody's coming to bring that to you. Nobody's really coming to save you. And this is one of those things where we need to go and seek the gym we're going to use to go train and the place we're going to go to develop tough money because it's not commonly available, unfortunately, in our society. So, to your point, the intention and the way this was designed was very purposeful. Wait, I tell people all the time, you can have this conversation using tough money in our tough money workbook with a 15-year-old at home because the simplicity of it will drive clarity and will drive understanding. And that same simplicity and clarity can be used in your board of directors with your business partners to drive business decisions. The foundational pieces of financial management are the same whether you make $60,000 a year or $60 million a year. And that understanding of your financial statements, of the habits necessary, again, with clarity and simplicity, is what drives actually progress towards making your money tougher.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I love that it's designed for really all audiences. And again,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the desired outcome for people is so they can find the freedom of time and money and relationship, whatever is important to them, right? It goes back to those 5 areas, that we can find abundance in all areas because, again, we have a close relationship with our money. So we're not having to have those sleepless nights thinking, oh, what if I had this or what if I had that? So again, it's this intentional, hey, we're going to put our money to work. We're going to understand that money has different purposes within our lives. And then how do we stress test it? And how do we make it stronger so when these events happen, we're prepared for it and we can take advantage of it. With that, let's dive into maybe the first series, David. If we can just talk about the first part of the series, of the Tough Money series.
Yes, absolutely. Let me just share one more thing with you because I think this will be helpful for everyone to see. So the next part here is our saving strategy. And this is consistent with every piece of our education, Wade. If you go back to becoming your own banker, if you go back to all of our frameworks we teach in our company, the number one habit we're trying to use here is overcoming Parkinson's law, or the ability to keep a portion of everything we earn. So we started the exercise by just bringing a little bit of financial awareness to the folks that go through this tough money workshop, and what is happening currently at their income statement level. Money that flows in, annual income, you said it earlier, it doesn't matter if it's 100 or a million or $10 million. Make it relevant and significant for your life. Add zeros or take away zeros. But from your annual income, the things that you want to become aware of is how are you allocating or how are you spending money? How much are you donating? How much is going to taxes, housing, transportation, lifestyle travel, etc. And the recognition here is that number one, we will give people a certain amount of time, maybe 3 minutes, to do this exercise. A lot of people express frustration that there's not enough time to complete the exercise, which is takeaway number one. We are not close enough to our money to know how our money's flowing through us once it comes in as income. And number two, the sequencing of the conversation is important. A lot of people receive income spend, and whatever is left in that checking account is called savings weight. And that level of sequencing is what is causing most Americans to have very low common savings behaviors.
Yeah, I know you go into this, and again, this is just snorkeling in the conversation, but we can go much deeper in that conversation as well
Mhm.
as we start talking about saving strategy. But the common, typical, average, let's call it average savings rate in this country is ridiculously low.
Yeah.
You've heard us talk before. It's not the income that's the problem; it's the savings. And this idea of the savings rate, and maybe you're going to go into that a little bit later, but it's like, what are we saving, and then does that get us to where we want to go? I think that's probably the disconnect. What we're doing today, is it? I don't want to call it good enough, but is it what we need to have to get us to where we want to go? And if it is, and it isn't, wouldn't it be great to know that? If it's not, then what can we do to change that?
And you are alluding here to the part that I think is critical in the exercise. So you do this exercise and you see the amount you're saving, and you're going to then translate this into a savings rate. Based on your income, how much is this savings in dollars represent as a savings rate? If you go to the history of savings rate that the Federal Reserve tracks, 5% is the number that Americans flirt with for 20, 30, 60 years, okay? It's a significantly low savings rate. But we're not in the business of telling people right or wrong or what to do. This is more important in terms of developing a habit that people arrive to their own conclusion and make their own decisions about what they want to do. So we put it in a framework where you can then contrast what you're doing with the typical American, and you can decide, I want to have a common behavior or I want to have an uncommon behavior to have uncommon results. There's no question that if you do uncommon things like saving more, you'll have more opportunity and more protection in your financial relationship with money. So we put that in a savings rate, and we ask everyone to set a target savings rate based on where they are currently. If they are too low, maybe increase it. If you feel confident with where you are, maybe stay there. It is up to you to decide how you manage this. But the awareness piece is really important because most people are shocked that they feel they're saving a significant amount of money, but once they do the exercise, they realize that they have pretty common behaviors. And finally, with that decision of, hey, I would like to target at 10%, at 12%, whatever the number is, I was at 5, I want to increase or double my savings rate. The paradigm here has nothing to do with the dollars and cents. The change here has to do with the sequencing of the process way. To develop and implement a strong savings habit that stays for a long time, we need to change the way we think about where savings place in a priority list. And what we tell clients is, once you receive income, the first person that should be paid for that income and that effort that was required to receive that money should be you. And if we prioritize the amount of savings we have at the top, what happens is people become tacticians at managing their spending. So if you take savings first and then work on your budget to spend, you will spend within the amount allocated. That is Parkinson's law working on your behalf, not against you. And that part there, again, simple, nothing revolutionary, nothing crazy, right? But that sequencing level there unlocks the ability for a 16-year-old to understand how savings actually work for them on a healthy way, the same way that a corporation can work on their free cash flows to be stronger because they control their spending and they increase their margin, the profit margin.
Yeah. Yeah, and that brings up a really good point. You've made this reference a couple of times. It's about sequence, right? And again, how change happens, how I see change happen is that first we have to find an awareness of the problem, awareness of an issue, if you want to call it a problem. But first that comes in awareness. And then we like, oh, I see that there's a problem there. I see that's not what I want. I feel like there's pain in my life or whatever it might be. There's an awareness. Then it comes to, oh, who can I help educate me on what I need to do to change? And then, so then it's okay, the awareness, and then it's okay, I've educated, I see where I'm going, I've educated, I brought enough information in. And when you have enough information to where you know where to go, then it's that taking action. So then that goes back to how do we become that person that's different than where we're at today, that doesn't have that sleepless nights because we don't have enough cash on hand, or we have to worry about a job. I was just reading about a local company here, just laid off, just going to close its doors, right? It's been around for 150 years, and now they're going to close their doors. So if you have that event going to happen, how do you prepare for that? And again, it comes to that sequence of awareness. You educate yourself and you start taking some action. And part of that education and taking action is who you're partnering with. And again, I would say that, David, you have a really good understanding of that. Now, people would be well served if they had a relationship with you, or had a relationship with me, because this is a journey, right? This is going to be a process that we really need to revisit on multiple times, maybe a year, however long it takes to get you where you want to go. And hopefully it never ends. Hopefully it's always reevaluating.
Yes. One last comment, and then we can talk about other stages in a subsequent episode. But a key thing, a key deliverable of this workbook is that you're going to have a page that is full of action items that you can immediately implement as you work through the workbook. And it's going to be supported by a second page that we call the key performance indicators, where you're going to capture the current metrics for your saving strategy. For example, what is your income? How much are you saving? And what's your savings rate? And then you're going to set the targets that you'd like to work towards. Target savings rate, target savings amount. This effectively is a business plan on how to implement over the next month, 6 months, 12 months, a saving strategy that continues to work better for you, that you can revisit and set new targets, and it becomes an ongoing financial management process way.
Yeah. Well said, David. I'm excited to have people kind of think about this and really engage with you in those conversations, or engage with us, because you and I work closely together with a lot of people to help them have that awareness and then find some action plans so they can start taking a change. But just engaging in this really with the work, we call it a workbook. It sounds for a third grader, but it's that simple, but yet I don't say complex. It's that important to where we get into it and we start, intentionally putting down where our thoughts are at, where we want to be, what are some key indicators of we having success, and then that's where the lifelong relationship starts to come with. So I thank you so much for taking us through that first stage. Again, if you're listening, we're going to have part 2 of this podcast where we're going to be talking about
The debt strategy portion of the workbook.
debt strategy. I'm looking forward to that, David. Again, thank you so much for this. And then tune in for part 2. We're going to be talking about debt strategy of the tough money conversation. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Wade.
If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.